Kia ora guys and welcome back to the Black Jersey. My name's Max, I'm the host over here at this channel, and a huge thank you to my patrons. The first video I've made after the 2023 Rugby World Cup, well, it has come a lot sooner than I was expected. I was literally just researching, doing my analysis for my post-match review of the World Cup final, and look what I've got. Eddie Jones resigns as Wallabies coach thanks to the Sydney Morning Herald. I'm going to read through this article with you guys so we can go through all the details. So before we do that, just make sure you are subscribed and you like this video and comment your thoughts on it, as this is really going to drum up a few opinions, I'm sure. So it says, Eddie Jones's controversial second stint as Wallabies coach is over. Less than 1 month, I know, after Australia's dismal World Cup campaign ended, the Wallabies were knocked out in the group stages for the first time in history. Jones and Rugby Australia are set to part ways. And that's why I'm wearing the Welsh jersey, because they confirmed the exit of the pool stage. This comes after the Herald's revelation last month that Jones had a secret interview with Japan rugby officials about taking over as the country's head coach in 2024. Jones denies that he has taken part or will sit in an interview with the JRFU, so it's all well and good to say that, but I think we'll definitely have to wait on this one whether it's true or not, because, well, rumors can be true sometimes, they can be false sometimes, so I'm definitely going to be having my eyes peeled on that one over there. The Herald reported on Friday that Jones informed Rugby Australia he was open to walking away from the Wallabies job less than 1 year into a 5-year contract. I am going to share a few thoughts on that very soon, that is for sure. The Wallabies won 2 of 9 tests under Jones this year. Sources with knowledge of the situation who requested anonymity to speak freely said Jones and Rugby Australia had reached an agreement. Rugby Australia declined to comment on the situation, issue earlier on Sunday. Chairman Hamish McLennan was contacted for comment. Jones spoke to this masthead's Peter Fitzsimmons about his resignation and said his overriding emotion was disappointment. Fairly so. Eddie Jones says that I gave it a run, hopefully be the catalyst for change. Sometimes you have to eat, word I won't say, for others to eat caviar further down the track, Jones said. Both parties have been locked in discussions over recent days about an exit for the under fire coach. There is final paperwork to be signed, but Jones's future as the Wallabies coach is over. This is a major embarrassment for Rugby Australia, who signs Jones on a 5-year deal in January after sacking Dave Rennie following a run of inconsistent performances. More to come. So long story short, should England have sacked Jones? I still don't think they should have, because simply put, England under Borthwick has been very, very boring to watch, but I also don't think Rugby Australia should have hired Jones. It's all well and good to agree with one decision, but it doesn't automatically mean that you disagree with the other. This is an absolute mess, man, to be honest, because Rugby Australia were finally starting to, get some things going. They were getting themselves the World Cup, they were signing private equity deals, they were actually starting to look for a full-time head coach for the Wallaroos, but then the whole Dave Rennie saga, man, I agree that Dave Rennie wasn't the right man for the job in the first place, but the problem is, I've said this repeatedly in my videos, it's a lot more complex than making sure Wildcard doesn't make an angry video about the situation of Rugby Australia, because the issues run far deeper than just performance at the top level. Rugby Australia, as many of you know, the Aussies watching, the sport of rugby union is a bit of a private school only thing, so it's not really spreading as much like the way it used to in the era of John Eales, and with Rugby League really starting to blow up, the NRL really going for it with the highlights, Super Rugby really restricting things, Super Rugby having very overpriced tickets as well, if my Melbourne friends have told me anything to go off, and it's just getting more and more exclusive, people are less and less keen on it, and we're seeing this with the fact that a lot of the current Wallabies are the children of immigrants or immigrants themselves. The average Australian doesn't care about rugby union. And by trying to hire Dave Rennie there and get the short-term sugar hit, it was never going to work. Dave Rennie's a Kiwi. from the Cook Islands. He cannot connect with the average kid born in Australia. Robbie Deans had the same problem. It's a bit of a same thing as well with perhaps even Jones in England. You know, perhaps Jones wasn't quite connecting with the Gen Z players who are my age. And overall, I think this is possibly even like a changing of the baton. With Rassie Erasmus and Jacques Nienaber coaching South Africa to 2 World Cups, this I think is possibly just a big symbol of boomers leaving the field of coaching, and with millennials starting to enter the field as coaching. Like James Marshall, who I've had on the channel as a guest before, he's a millennial. He's a Crusaders assistant coach right now. Tamati Ellison, who was coaching the Wellington Lions in New Zealand this year, he's a millennial. Millennials are starting to become coaches, and boomers are really starting to exit. If I was Eddie Jones, I would just straight up retire, man, because with all the controversy, I don't think he'd want to tarnish his reputation any further, because the whole Rugby Australia thing, it's really done a huge bit of damage to Eddie Jones's reputation, really. Eddie Jones was, I guess, hired for the same reason that Dave Rennie was hired. Dave Rennie was hired out of Rugby Australia, wanting to imitate New Zealand, be a replica of the Kiwis, get the short-term sugar hit to just get a sudden, instant gratification of results. And in the era of social media, we forget that Rome's not built in a day. We forget that good things take time, you know? The Springboks, for example, 2019, you could probably make the excuse of an early draw, but 2023, that just came down to a lot of hard work, a lot of preparation, and just, you know, the touch little bit of luck that they didn't have any major injuries aside from Handré Pollard coming in late, back from injury. But man, oh man, this is just embarrassing for Rugby Australia, honestly. Eddie Jones was supposed to be involved with the Wallaroos as well, but he never even got involved with the setup. The Wallabies as well, you know, it was probably the right decision to get rid of Michael Hooper, get rid of Quade Cooper, get rid of Bernard Foley, but where were the other experienced players that could have come in? Why was Will Skelton, for example, named as the captain when Tate McDermott had already done the job in Dunedin, for example? Why was Dave Parecki, who is not up to test standards whatsoever, given the captain's armband instead of McDermott, who was named as the official vice-captain? Jones, based on all the interviews I've watched, based on all the articles I've read, he did not believe the Wallabies had a chance at winning the World Cup. Deep down, I truly believe that Eddie Jones realised they didn't have a chance to win, and Eddie Jones, because he was in Rugby Australia, because he was desperate to get his reputation back, he fell prey to the nature of the short-term sugar hit that has plagued Rugby Australia for 2 decades. I was 3 years old when they last had grasp of the Bledisloe Cup, and this year Eddie Jones couldn't win it back for them. Not even Eddie Jones could fix the absolutely massive hole that Rugby Australia is in, and he just simply chose the wrong strategy to do as he was told to do. Eddie Jones was told that, you know, you need to get into a semi-final, blah, 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 and he went about it the wrong way. He could have, you know, continued with what Rennie had built and actually applied strategies to them, but instead of doing that, he trusted the next generation, and that was kind of the inverse of what Steve Borthwick does, because when you get a coach at short term before a World Cup, they've got 2 choices. They either just sacrifice the World Cup, start new, go fresh, take a gamble, and for that, it paid off for Wayne Smith, it nearly paid off for Michael Cheika, and it paid off for Steve Borthwick, on the other hand, though, to do the complete opposite. Warren Gatland paid off to do the opposite as well, because the men's game has been a professional game for nearly 30 years at this point, and you've got to prepare, you've got to do analysis, and blokes like Rob Leota, who have never researched their opposition in their entire life, they just simply weren't going to be prepared for an Eddie Jones radical overhaul, and it really did backfire. So, yep, Eddie Jones resigned. Good on him. He did the right thing. He clearly knows that he messed up, and he's paid the price by resigning. And what do Rugby Australia do now, though? Do not bring back Michael Cheika. Don't go for the short-term sugar hit. But the problem is, Dan McKellar. That is the man who should have come in instead of Dave Rennie in 2020. Just go long-term. Think about, say, 8 years from now. Think about 20 years from now. Do you want the Wallabies to just play a bad imitation of the 90s and not research their opposition? Or do you want to build a young core from the get-go rather than rely on fossils like Michael Hooper? Dave Rennie tried to mix it all together, do exactly what Fozzie was doing, except he didn't have the personnel. and Dave Rennie paid the price by cementing himself as the worst Wallabies coach of all time, but Eddie Jones simply could not recover because he made the wrong decisions as well. Stephen Larkham never won a trophy as a head coach before. He got sacked as the assistant coach at the end of 2018, and another selector came in to, I guess, release Michael Cheika's totalitarian control of the Wallabies selections. Dan McKellar as well. We'll go back to him. Now that they went for Dave Rennie, he's over at the Leicester Tigers. He's coaching in the United Kingdom. He was an assistant coach when Dave Rennie was in charge. If the Wallabies really, really wanted to get decent success, maybe they should have, sucked up the fact that Dave Rennie was going to be their worst ever coach. They weren't going to get out of the playoffs. They should have just sucked it up and continued to groom McKellar for succession, even though they didn't sign him in 2020. But no, when Eddie Jones came in, they allowed Eddie Jones to get rid of McKellar, and if they want to get McKellar back into the country, they're going to have to pay out a huge sum of money to the Leicester Tigers, and if Hamish McLennan's whole 90 million loan thing is true, well then Rugby Australia are going to have to fetch a fair portion of that already, because Leicester have already allowed England, the RFU, to buy out Borthwick 1 year ago. Rugby Australia's in a massive hole. I don't think Leicester would agree to releasing Dan McKellar for a massive fee for his contract. Stephen Larkham's the only real option for them. Or perhaps even Ian Foster. And I don't think Fozzie, a real patriot who loves this country, is going to be the right option either. Because it's going to be Robbie Deans, it's going to be Dave Rennie all over again. Fozzie, a very smart man, emotionally, he hasn't grown up the same way as all these Australian kids. He's not going to be able to connect with them, just like how Dave Rennie couldn't, just like how Robbie Deans couldn't. Fozzie, for all his ability to, resonate with people, the fact that he has his Christian faith that can bond him to players, he doesn't understand the entire background because he didn't grow up in Australia. That's the reason why an overseas-born head coach has never won a Rugby World Cup before, and why Andy Farrell, if he gets to one with Ireland in 2027, is probably going to be one of the few in history. Rugby Australia are in a massive, massively deep hole. Eddie Jones was right to resign, but what the heck are Rugby Australia going to do? They're screwed. And the first video I'm going to make after my post-Rugby World Cup analysis for the 2023 World Cup final, it is going to be a video on what the heck do Rugby Australia do from here. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe to that as well. You can also follow me over on Instagram to see what I'm up to, get a bit of a notification as to when it drops. Also, just remember as well, guys, do leave your comment section down below and do consider becoming a patron if you can afford signing up, because I would really appreciate it. The channel is my full-time job, and I want to continue working to bring the good news and the good analysis to you guys, even after the World Cup is done, continuing into 2024. Thank you so much for viewing this video, guys. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time from Max.